As you know, Stripe is a software infrastructure platform for building an online business and in particular for accepting payments. With this round, I don't think there's anything that we sort of ring-fence the capital for in particular. I think what has got investors really excited about Stripe is the momentum that we've carried through 2016. 2016 was the year of building for scale at Stripe, and scale has come. In particular, a lot of really big companies have been joining Stripe. SAP, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, Target, UNICEF have all joined the Stripe platform. In addition, we've opened up 4 new markets, France, Spain, Singapore, Japan, and launched a bunch of great new products. Products like Radar, that's a fraud product, and Atlas, which is for incorporating a business. And so I think as we look into 2017, the capital is really just to double down on those efforts, open up a bunch of new markets, and just be ready for the scale to come.
So you mentioned Bloomingdale's and Macy's. Cyber Monday spending up now 12%. How do you guys continue to monetize and capitalize on this trend?
Well, I think that, as you mentioned a second ago, up 12% year over year. Yesterday was a huge, huge day for Stripe users, and we see more and more commerce moving from offline to online. So Stripe is really about being an ally to startups and technology companies and giving them the tools to accelerate their businesses, to go global, to build marketplaces and platforms, and sort of pioneer new business models.
So $9 billion is double Square's market cap. Is the difference justified, and why?
Well, Stripe and Square are very different businesses. And in fact, Square is a business that I greatly admire. It's a great business, but it serves a very different user base and is solving a very different problem. So, for Square, you're looking at the huge market of millions of small businesses across the country, largely offline, coffee shops, hair salons, things like that. Stripe, in turn, is very focused on technology companies. So these are often very high growth companies building businesses online and taking advantage of the new opportunities the internet creates.
So on that note, analysts estimate you guys processed $20 billion last year. What's the estimate or the forecast for this year, and how fast do you expect that number to grow?
Well, so as a private company, we don't report any financials right now. We haven't confirmed any numbers. As I mentioned a second ago, we are seeing a lot of great scale driven in particular by a lot of really large users joining Stripe.
So we've been talking a lot about the political situation. Obviously, you mentioned you guys have a lot of international efforts, international expansion happening. You have a partnership with Alipay in China. I know that you are now in Cuba as a result of the White House opening relations with Cuba. Now we have a president who says, president-elect, who says he wants to curb our trade relationship with China, potentially end the relationship with Cuba. Are you concerned at all about Stripe's business?
Well, as you note, Emily, earlier this year, when the president was making his historic trip down to Cuba, actually reached out to Stripe in particular to invite us down there. In fact, a lot of entrepreneurs on the ground in Cuba were asking for Stripe to be there because of our Atlas product. And Stripe will always be about economic inclusion. We're really about building the technologies to create a more economically interconnected world. What it means with the new administration joining, I'm not the expert to talk about policy or sort of macro conditions. What I can say is there's strong evidence that the new administration is quite pro-business, that job creation and stoking the economy in general is a priority, and so we're aligned at least in that way.
So is it something that you guys are watching and following? I mean, obviously you've got interests in a lot of these countries that have now become really hot button issues.
I think it's something we're watching and following. It's something we'll know a lot more about in a few weeks.
So let's talk about international expansion. Where next?
Well, so we don't share our exact roadmap, but what I will say is that we're now in 25 countries, which means there's 171 countries that we are not in yet, and certainly some of those are harder to reach, but we have a very strong business in Europe and Southeast Asia, and we'll be doubling down on those regions.
You're often mentioned as the a forthcoming IPO candidate. Any update on when that is going to happen, and if the new political environment changes that?
So I don't think anything changes for us. We're very happy as a private company. Stripe is very, very capital efficient, which means we really have no need to rush to the public markets.
So last question, obviously, I've spoken to Patrick and John Collison many times, founders of the company. The Bloomberg Billionaires Index now calculates they are Ireland's youngest billionaires. And I'm curious, I mean, obviously I have my own impression from interviewing them, but from your perspective, what sets them apart as leaders?
Well, I think John and Patrick have had from day one a really extraordinary vision for Stripe, and about Stripe being about more than just payments, but about enabling entrepreneurs to build huge businesses online. And so I think it's really that vision, the dedication, the passion, and perhaps most importantly, the long-term orientation that they bring that sets them apart.